Good morning, everybody. So, this is officially the first of my Q&As about women's safety, health, common sense, and what you can do to keep yourself safe in the Western world. I've gotten a bunch of questions from all of you, and this will not be one of those colorful videos with a whole lot of graphs and pictures. This will basically be me giving you advice on how to live a safer life. And I know listening to me talk may make some of you wonder what's the reason of staying back alive and not jumping off a bridge. Well, I learned a thing or two and I'm going to share it all with you. For some of you guys who haven't read, it's such a colloquial term. It's using the term some of you guys when I'm predominantly talking to an audience full of hopefully women. No offense, I think it's been described as an acceptable term in this time of vastly confusing what can we say or do or not do. So I'm going to say, ladies, you have not all read my books or heard me speak or something. I worked with personal protection for many, many years before and after and during my military service. I'm an instructor with the International Security Advisory Team. And I have written books for women on how to stay safe. I've done Q&As on TV and radio because I work with personal protection, and doing that has given me an insight to what the realistic problems are you face in the Western world. And to me, with no offense whatsoever to my gay friends, this is my cause. We all have a cause that matters to us. Women's safety is important to me. So that is what I have chosen. Most of the advice is pretty much the same in how you live your life, what to watch out for, how to conduct yourself in an everyday life setting, whether you're a man or a woman or boy or girl. But let's face it here, the most endangered people are women between 13, 14, 25, 26, 27 here in the West. And I hope you will all share this video with a little bit of advice for that age group. Now, you've all written me some questions and I've gotten some more over time, and we're gonna start with the first one. Why do I talk about women's safety in the Western world? Why do I qualify at the West? Because in a very large part of the world, the sensibilities, the freedom of movement and decision for women and young girls are not the same as in the West. There's cultural issues at work, religious issues at work. So I have to qualify my advice to the girls of the world who are free to think and maneuver and live the life you want to live, of movement, of thought, of existence. Because what I will tell you, or what I will give you, hopefully, is advice, food for thought, that you can implement in your life, yourself, on making your life safer. For women who are unfortunate enough to not have that freedom, there's nothing I can say that will make a difference because you don't have the freedom of that choice. And I think we all need to remember that we are not in the Western world as unfortunate. We are very, very fortunate to have the freedom we do. And that is something that is very much worth fighting for and thinking about. And hopefully that will flood over into the parts of the world where women are far less free than we are. And that is something that's worth fighting for. But that's why I qualify it, my videos for women in the West. It's all about that. Okay, at what point in time does violence in a relationship become acceptable or tolerable or excusable? That's very simple. Never. Once violence has entered a relationship, one way or another, the relationship is dead. It is over. The foundation has been broken. I do not care if he or she was drunk and you were fighting in a bar. The moment you start laying physical harm on each other, the relationship is over. You have found an extremely bad dynamic and you need to get as far away from each other as possible. And I say that having studied psychology all my life, and I know there's rehabilitation and there's couples therapy and there's all these wonderful tools you can use to better and repair broken relationships, and honestly, I don't care. When a person has shown that within him, as let's go with violence from men to women, shall we? Lord knows there's some of you very temperamental ladies out there that has that will at times smack your husband. But and I'm sorry, it's not politically correct. There's a difference between men and women. Men are physically stronger than women. That's why from the dawn of ages, we were the ones out chasing the buffaloes, defending our nations, so you could stay safe, because we physically are stronger than women. So when men induces violence on women, it's disproportionate, and it is far more harmful. It is something, that is why I'm speaking specifically to violence against women. But if your boyfriend or significant other has shown that within himself he has no moral compass, or he has such a flimsy wall in his moral compass that it takes aggravation or slight angerment or fight in order for him to lay his hands on you, that shows what he is. Not necessarily that it was not, hate to say it, justified. In a verbal debate that escalates, maybe drugs or alcohol involved, he feels some justification. Afterwards, you might feel that you brought it on him, that, well, I shouldn't have said this or that. However, when somebody shows that they are capable of physically harming women or children, the relationship needs to end. They need to go away and work on those problems. And you need to go and be safe, away from somebody that you can trigger. Sometimes people in relationships, they trigger each other for a lot of not very good reasons. Misplaced attention is one of them. Past trauma, reliving past traumas is unfortunately one of them. And unfortunately, a lot of young women, a lot of women who have gone through child abuse, sexual abuse, rape, are in some subconscious way seeking to relive some of these traumas by finding equally abusive boyfriends or dates. It is not acceptable. You need to move away from violence. It is very simple. Argue all you want if you need to argue. If you disagree, agree to disagree. But once you start fighting and there start to be physical violence in a relationship, it's over. You need to go away. You need to separate yourself, because it will not stop. Same thing as with a deliberate rape committed by a rapist. Rape is never a singular crime. Let's take away from the drunken teenagers that goes too far, and you're drunk and you're naked and you say no and you say yes. It becomes a bit of a gray zone. But if it's a deliberately stalked down rapist who is selecting his victims, it is not a singular crime. It is a serial crime. Most rapists are repeat offenders. So giving them a couple of years in prison back on the street, they're going to continue. And this is something we need to deal with very, very seriously. Same thing as violence against women. I have heard it so often. I know he beat his ex-wife, but he really loves me. No. If he has shown and known violence towards women is within him, it's going to happen to you too. There is no arguing this. Violence in relationships are completely unacceptable. Violence to children, violence to animals is completely unacceptable. And when you see somebody committing violence to women, children, animals, it shows a very dark side of that person that you need to be aware of. It's just like the temperamental guy yelling at the waiter. Why? If you have that temper and you can't control it, it shows a little bit about who you are. It shows you a little bit how that person is, and you need to be aware. Listen to your instincts. Which is the other thing? Listen to your instincts. Is the question. I've often said women need to listen to your instincts in spite of what society have been teaching. What do I mean? All right. I should probably have started this little Q&A by telling you I'm not going to be politically correct here. I'm going to be honest, because you need to know, honestly, what is going on, what do you need to worry about. And I cannot toe the ridiculous line of political correctness to the degree it has been imposed on us to destroy any kind of debate. So, disclaimer, don't take offense. This is what I've learned for the past many, many years. I've been doing this since I was, believe it or not, I think I was 14 the first time I was asked to protect somebody else. That's what I've learned. And it may not agree with everybody. It may not be viable advice for everybody, but it is the advice obtained. All right, what do I mean by that? I mean, we are being told we are all the same. We're one big gray mass. We should all exist. We're not different. Men and women, we're all the same. And that whole big gray debate, which is absolutely nonsense. It is complete and utter nonsense. We are very, very different. Men and women are different. Physically, we're different. People who grew up in different places have different motivations and behavioral patterns. People with different religions, people with different cultures have different behavioral patterns. And that's what I mean by we are all different. We behave different. The guy I went to school with who grew up 2 blocks from me, we're probably not that different because we grew up in the same place, we come from the same place, we go to the same school, we watch the same TV shows, we have the same stimuli, we are probably very similar. But I will probably have a very different behavioral pattern than somebody who grew up in rural Russia, or rural Armenia, or rural China. Just to throw some examples out there, we are all different, we behave differently. And one of the things that, the cardinal sin we are teaching by saying this is telling our young people, those of you younger than me, I'm not that old, but still, you, don't listen to your instincts, because your instincts are racist, or no, you can't think that way because that's not nice, or no, you have to listen, toe the line, we're all the same, you can't feel bad in the company of X, Y, and Z. Yes, you can. And you absolutely have to listen to your instincts. Before anything else, you have to put your phone away. You have to stop walking the dark streets with your phone in your hand. You have to listen with your mind and observe what is going on around you and listen to what people are saying. Look at their behavior of the people around you. And if you don't feel comfortable, then walk away. If you are typical, the example I used to use was if you're a young girl going to your car at night and you're about to go in the parking garage late at night in the downtown parking lot, and there's a couple of gangbangers that's in the elevator, and you don't feel comfortable, and you're like, well, no, that's silly. It's not going to happen to me. And I feel so bad because, they look like gangsters, but I'm just profiling. That's terrible. Notwithstanding what a gangster looked like. That is all up into your own personal fears and interpretations. But listen to your instinct. If you don't feel comfortable in the presence of somebody, well, then don't be present to them. Then go away. Take the stairs. Find an easier way to get to your car. But you have to listen to your instincts. Women have incredibly good instincts, and you're deliberately told not to listen to them. You have to, because it will save your life. Instincts have saved our lives in time immemorial by that little voice saying, you know what, there's something wrong here. Or you're on a date and put your phone down and just observe and listen to your date and what he's saying, how he behaves. And you're like, there's a little red flag. Listen to it. Job interviews, or it's soldiers in combat, or wherever you are. If you are in a company that makes you uncomfortable, then leave that company. If you don't feel, I'm going down. The shortcut to your car at 3 o'clock at night leaving the club is through the dark park. And you have that little voice saying, I really don't feel comfortable doing that. Then don't. Take the long way. Follow the lights. But you have to think, and you have to plan ahead, and you have to observe what's going on around you. And you do not do that if you're walking down the street with your head borrowed in your cell phone. Because your cell phone will probably kill you by the mere fact that it will distract you from looking at the things you need to be looking at. Not just oncoming traffic, but also the people that are looking at you. And that is the world we live in. You need to be aware, you need to be safe. And let me give you a bit of statistics from the US alone. I can't give you every statistic for your own part of the world, but 49% of all women in America will experience some sort of sexual violence. Not necessarily rape, but sexual violence. 49% in their lifetime. That is half. That is very likely that it involves you listening to me talk right now, which should make you put your phone down and pay attention to what's going on, because you don't need to be part of the 49%. 1 in every 5 women in this country will at some point in time be raped, which to me is absolutely outrageous. It used to be the statistics. The statistics are sometimes misleading, depending on who wrote them and why they wrote them, because you can use statistics to mislead people. But I really don't care if it's 25% or it's 50% of American women being exposed to sexual violence or sexual harassment at work. It is just not good enough. It is not good enough if this is sexual violence or harassment against men or women. This is a sign that we have forgotten our moral compass. We have forgotten what is right and wrong. And I know some people will point out that the code of chivalry was made in a male-dominated world and blah, blah, blah. Code of chivalry still, to me, means you hold the door for the elderly lady. It means you respect and treat women and children proper. Women and children, lifeboats first, remember, from the Titanic. But there's nothing wrong with us conducting ourselves that way, and we probably still should. So be aware of your surroundings, listen to your instincts, and don't be the negative side of the statistic. Protect yourself. Because we have bad people out there. There are bad people in this world. There are. And that's not going to change. And you need to be as aware as possible so you are not around them. Or keep them at least as far away from you and your family and your children. Which brings me to a question about what to do about sexual child abuse. Which I touched a little bit upon. And my own personal feelings about people who abuse children, probably not best said. I think those of you who know me have some idea what I think we should do to child molesters and rapists. Problem with sexual violence against children is the perpetrator usually gets away with it because the family members either do not know, they are bullied into silence, the mothers are cowed, and they're not brought to justice until sometimes after it's not known until sometimes after they even pass away. And this is where I will say to the families and the friends, if you suspect violence or sexual violence against children in a family, any family, it is your duty as a human being in a civilized world to speak up, act up, or investigate. Because this needs to be stopped. You are ruining somebody's life. And it's not the child's fault. And if you are in a relationship with an abusive male figure who you might think is abusing your children or yourself, as a mother, you need to evacuate that relationship. And your friends need to support you and protect you and help you. And that is one of the problems. Another question, what are the problems? What can you advise women to help how to get away from abusive husbands who wouldn't leave them alone? That's a problem. If you are in an abusive relationship, which leads back to what we were just talking about, you need to get away. Sometimes abusive men will not let you go, or they will follow you, stalk you, and there's violence. What you need to do is document the violence so you can get to the police and get a restraining order. And when they break the restraining order, which most of the time they will, then they will go to prison. But you need to document the events, and you need to reach out to your friends so they can help support and protect you. This is where community and friends and friendships are important, because the law enforcement, they're underfunded, and it's very hard for them to be everywhere and do everything. And the laws that have been implemented over the past 10 years, it makes it harder and harder for police to actually go after the perpetrators and to protect you and to protect women and children, which is outrageous when politicians issue laws that are outright detrimental to women and children's safety and health, or early release to a vast number of rapists like here in California. It is absolutely outrageous that that is happening, but it is happening. So all we can do is bond together with family, friends, and watch out for your friends. When you see somebody, and you know, your family knows, your friends know, people know if you're in an abusive relationship, you need to rally around that person and get the violence out of her life and away from her children's lives. And you need to, again, document everything, photos, dates, what happened, when happened, every single little small thing, so you can present it to the judge. This is over the past 6 months. He hurt me all these times. Here are the photos. These are the dates. These are the locations. He cannot defend himself against that, and you'll get a restraining order. And that is the first step towards your freedom. All right. Oh, it's upsetting. But, okay. Here's one I was asked by a young gentleman who was sexually abused by someone in his family. And he wrote me a very long, detailed letter on this, and I was very moved that he did. I'm very happy that he shared it, because it goes back to why are you always talking about sexual abuse against women and girls when more young boys are sexually abused than young girls? And it goes back to my pet peeve is try to keep women and young girls safe. That is just me. But it most certainly doesn't take away from the fact that young men and young boys are sexually abused just as much, and have not seen all the statistics, just even more than apparently young girls. Sexual abuse against children is wrong. It needs to be addressed. And where I think this has always existed. Sexual abuse has always existed. Certainly, unfortunately, we live in a world where we are surrounded by non-perfect, sometimes violent and predatory people. Cannot get away from that fact. You cannot. And you have all this attack on masculinity and masculine males. However, since the dawn of time, it's been a masculine man with a moral center that is correct that has kept those less physically strong safe. And I think maybe the evisceration of the father figure, maybe the slow destruction. There's been the war in the family. We have more divorced families now and single mothers than we have married couples. If there's a father figure in a family, a predator is less likely to go after the young boys or the children or the daughter in the family, because he knows there's a protective dad. And I think that's one of the problems we're having, is we are slowly eroding the foundation for the family and couples, and we are slowly pushing each other away with phones, digital, online. Everything is at an arm's distance. You no longer care about what's next to you, because no one's next to you except your phone and your computer. And we are losing the family role, we're losing the protector in the families, and everything seems to go. Everything is fine. You can do this and that, and we have all these different sexual orientations and all of this that is completely confusing a whole generation of young people, because what is right and wrong? The definitions have been completely washed out, which means it opens up the door to any kind of not going to say alternative kind of life, because that's not about it. It's about, well, if this is okay, why is this not okay? And then that becomes okay. Well, that's okay. Then that's okay. And then all of a sudden we get to be, well, you know, sexual children. It's gone too far. And I know that it sounds a little bit old-fashioned, but the old-fashioned common sense may not be the worst thing in the world that we need to get back to, even though some of us has to look up at what exactly is common sense and how did that affect the family, and all the way down to who is protecting the young children, who is protecting the young girls, who is protecting the young boys, who has the moral center of doing this. And I think there's a long story that could be talked about this, and I think maybe we should look at the societies that have, great, someone turned the AC on. We should look at the societies that have less sexual abuse and try to find out why. If we go to rural communities, not having seen statistics, are those numbers better? Are they, if there's a family core, family unit, is there less of a chance towards sexual violence and abuse? These are things we should look into, and I would look very much forward to your thoughts and numbers on that. All right, what else have we got? It just gets better. I wish there was something happy. 1 million women are sold into sex slavery every year. 7,000 to 10,000 of them in America domestic. 3 million women are sold into slavery every year. What can we do? Oy. All right, here's my pet peeve. During 9/11, we lost about 3,000 Americans and 3,000 people in the Trade Center and the planes that went down. We have about 4 million women sold into sex slavery or slavery every year. We have tens of thousands of women domestically sold and traded and forced into sex slavery every year. And after 9/11, we went to war for almost 20 years and lost thousands of soldiers. This happens, these women are sold on a daily basis in our country. And where's the war? Where's the political debate? Why is that not on the forefront? It's not trending, it's not interesting. You can't blame it on the president. It is absolutely ridiculous that we cannot safeguard our women and children. And what can be done, a lot of these children, unfortunately, these women, let's take the thousands of women that are sold or forced into sex slavery in America alone. Let's talk about how that happens. Many of them are immigrants that are being abused, coerced, or forced, or into sexual acts under various threats. A lot of this starts with drugs, drug use, being drugged and forced into this. Some of them are your school friends in college, in high school, that are simply being threatened, or their families are being threatened into sexual acts. And it happens all over this country. Not to mention young American girls that are actively being kidnapped, picked up, put on ships, and sent to where they will never come home again. A lot of the women that are being forced into sex slavery in this country, they come home. They have families that don't know. There's massive sex trade going on within the gangs in this country, and it is something that we could, with a massive law enforcing effort and legal effort, begin to combat and do something against, which means taking massive action against drug dealers, against gangs, which are many times the same people. And I don't want to be the one to say we need to take a look at our immigration and see who's being smuggled over the borders, but we definitely need to do something about this. And I don't want to bring the politics into this, but it's common sense. We need to know who's coming and going. We need to know who's being forced in here. And when the numbers are here, on the numbers I have, 7,000 to 10,000 girls are traded in the sex trade in America every year. That is a very, very low number that does not cover those forced into various types of prostitution, forced into rape-like situations on a recurring basis. The violence against women, the organized violence against women, is staggering. And it is something that we at every level of society, from the friends, from the school friends, to law enforcement, to military, to everybody from the DEA to the Border Patrol, to everyone, we need to combat this, because we cannot say we live in a civilized society, but we are not taking dramatic effort to combat those who perpetrate violence against our women and children. It is just not acceptable, and it needs to be addressed. And we need to start in the communities, maybe in the schools, maybe in the churches. It's something that we need to look at. And all right, I want to take this next question before I continue my answers. Is what do you make of all the false rape accusations that has been made and has been used by the Me Too movement? Oh yeah, okay. If you, let's be honest, there have been a number of false rape accusations made against high-profile members of government and businessmen, CEOs, normal people. And when I started working with personal protection, I started working with stalking victims, battered women, and I always took the women's side, because that's who I am, that's what I was. And well, that's who I am. I always try to take the women's side because they need to be protected. It's my world, that's what I say. And now I'm finding more and more women are making these false accusations for financial gain, for attention, and they're ruining lives. And you see, in our schools, we're seeing these overreactions. I saw there was a woman who, or young girl, she reported a young man for having raped her, whereas on investigation it turned out that he asked for her phone number because he was inviting her out. And she felt that had violated her to the point where she felt raped. Having been indoctrinated so deeply in what rape was, that she actually thought that's no penetration. It was in a public place. He just asked for her phone number. And I think we need to keep an eye on, well, what is what? There's a physical, invasive, violent sexual act that is rape. And then there's the innocent young guy flirting with a girl asking for her number, which is obviously not rape. If she's not interested, she can say no. And if he puts her hands on her, well, now we have a violence case. That's different. But we have to start looking at the interaction between men and women in today's society, because we are losing track of what is right and what is wrong. And what I mean by that is now we are at a point where men and women in some situations are almost afraid of talking to one another or interacting. I have friends that are business owners and CEOs will not stay at the same hotel as their secretaries. They will not share the elevator because they are so afraid that anything they might say and do, even in fun or jest, will be used against them in one way or another. And it brings me back to, like, well, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to appropriate as a species if men and women are being driven apart and we are no longer allowed to even talk or flirt or communicate? So I think we maybe have to swing the pendulum back to a more balanced zero in how we are interacting. I don't think there's a trend one way or the other, but false rape accusations is a devastating thing that absolutely should, well, what do I think we should do about it? If you make a false rape accusation, you should go to jail. That was the only thing, because none of the women, as far as I know or have seen, that has made a false accusation, and remember here, I'm only talking about false accusations that are proven and admittedly to be false. None of them have had any legal action taken against them, which means you can destroy a man's life, get him fired from his job, ruin his family, drive him to suicide, as had happened in some cases, and nothing will happen to you. That is not acceptable. So yes, if you make false accusations, you should go to jail. That will at least hopefully stop such things from happening again. And again, I can caution common sense. What is your best advice for women on how to survive being attacked? Okay. If you are assaulted, you fight. You fight and scream and shout and claw and kick. Regardless if there's 1 or 2 or 3 assailants, you make as much noise as you can, and you fight with everything you have. And you do have that in you, even if you think you don't, sitting here listening to this. And you do it immediately. You do not submit, you do not cower, and if you are hit, you do not bend. The decisive moments of any kind of violent engagement, same as in the military. If you're ambushed, you fight back immediately, or they will have an upper hand. If you are assaulted on the street, if you are assaulted at home, you make noise and you fight and you make yourself an unlikely target. And when you walk the streets, you go to your car, you down to school, you carry yourself as somebody who will fight. Because it's quite well known the psychology behind rapists is they want to intimidate and subdue and tyrannize, and they will look for a weaker victim that will let themselves be bullied and cowered. Don't be that victim. Carry yourself as a strong, independent female who's ready and willing to fight. And you have to be, because you don't know, if you don't fight, you may be raped and killed. And the first thought is, oh, what if I just do what he says? Maybe he won't hurt me. You cannot live on that assumption. You can only assume that if you are being assaulted, expect you're fighting for your life. And do so, and draw attention to yourself. Which brings me to another question that I'm not going to read, but it's just going to follow into this. Again, listen to your instincts and be aware of your surroundings, and don't find yourself in the company of people you do not know, and especially not while doing drugs or drinking. Don't catch a ride home from somebody you don't know. Don't be left behind in somebody's house with their friends because you think you don't know. This is where you have to be aware. And being aware sometimes means that you have to have a little bit of a clear mind. You can't be drunk or stoned or drugged up, surrounded by people you don't know. You have to be aware of where this is going. Oh, we're going to my friend's house. Okay. All right, you go to a friend's house, there's 20 people, half of them are men. Okay, all right, we're partying. They're all good, but be aware. One of the guys want to take you upstairs, want to go somewhere, want to give you a ride home when you want to leave. You don't know this person. Well, he's a friend of my friend, so it's going to be okay. You don't know that. How good a friend? Everybody refers to everybody else, oh, it's my friend. He doesn't know what this person contains, and neither do you. You do not, same thing, you do not meet a first date. You don't have the first date pick you up at your house. You don't know a first date. Online dating is great. Everybody online dates. But you don't know who that person is. You meet at the restaurant. You get there in your own car so you can leave. And you don't tell a first date you don't know to pick you up at your house. He doesn't need to know where you live. And you definitely don't want to get into a car with a stranger, because he's a stranger. Develop trust before you're alone with people. And you have to be aware of these things before you find yourself in situations. It's all about situational awareness. And I have had young girls tell me, I can't be bothered thinking about this because it'll stress me out. Oh, and yeah, it'll stress you out to think about your safety and your health and your life and to look at your surroundings, but I bet it'll stress you out a lot more to be raped or killed. And I know that's an extreme A to B, and you can't run around being paranoid because you can't live that way either. But being aware of your surroundings, being aware of the people around you, listen to your sixth sense, and plan ahead. Where are you going and how are you going to get home from there? It's fairly simple. Right. Drug use, Drugs are bad, you're impaired. If you do drugs, you are not thinking as clearly as you were without doing drugs. That's just a fact. If you are stoned on weed, if you are high on weed, you are impaired. You may not think you are, but you are. And there might be people taking advantage of that. You are not driving as well. You are not making the same sound decisions. If you're high, I suggest you use weed like you use alcohol. Get drunk, or get stoned on a Friday night after work or Saturday, and don't do it every day, all day. It's not to your benefit. You are not the person you think you are when you are high, believe me. Wow. Okay. Statistics are misleading, yes. Politics. Somebody asked me about politics, and somebody asked me who I think we should all vote for and what we should all do, and I'm not touching that. I am not touching the politics because this is advice from me as a security professional to you, the young women in the Western world, about how to be safe. And politics seems to have become the new religion where you are either one or the other, and all common sense have gone out the window. So I will just tell you this when it comes to this was who do you think I should vote for to stay safe? I know the answer to this. But I want you to discover the answer for that for yourself. This is what you do. You start honestly, not necessarily using Google, because Google is not exactly honest. Wikipedia, not exactly correct. The media, definitely not correct, so you can't use that either. Now, you need to start studying. Look up who has passed laws that will, in effect, make life safer for young girls, families, women, children. Who has passed laws supporting law enforcement efforts in this, military efforts on this abroad? Who has actively over the past 10, 20 years passed laws and created things that makes your life safer and gives you the ability to protect yourself and supports law enforcement in these efforts? You will be surprised at what you find, especially if you are a young millennial. I've had a lot of talks about this, and I found that with the information they find, they are a little surprised at who's actually more concerned about the safety and health and freedom of young women than others. To me, I really don't, there's a lot of things politicians do that I don't really give a damn about, but my safety and freedom, I do very much give a damn about, and your safety and freedom, I very much give a damn about. And so should you. And you should get involved, and you should do your research proper. Even if it leads you down a direction you did not think you might agree with. This is about your health, your safety. And if you ever seen friends or family or young girls abused by criminals that should have been behind bars, that's a very, very bitter pill to swallow. And you don't want to be that person. Be safe, keep an eye out, pay attention to where you're going, put your cell phone down, judge your company, and be safe, and write me all your questions, and we will do this again as long as I have more than 10.